Once you write a good script, the rest will work itself out. John Sweatman, a prolific scriptwriter who wrote such classics as Evidence 2013 and Into the Storm 2014. Regardless, this is obviously in relation to script writing for movies, and I don't know about you, but I'm not a scriptwriter. Or am I? In 1972, Eric Berne coined the term life scripts. These are subconscious scripts that we follow and reinforce due to qualia that we experience. Qualia, characteristics or quantities that determine the nature of our mental experience, sensation or perception and make it distinguishable from other such experiences. Basically, experiences. The theory of being formed as a person based on what we're told and shown as kids and also our experiences. For example, when parents are showing off their two new children and they describe one as the good boy and the other one is the naughty one. In theory, they then grow up with these preconceptions in mind and begin to act accordingly to what they've been told. Now you may say, that's absolute bullshit. But what about divorced parents? Let's say you have divorced parents and you get to the age where you start dating. You have your first dating experience and at the end, they dump you. You get out your little life scripts, of course, subconsciously, and you go, oh, okay. Maybe you then have another relationship and sucks to be you, it ends the exact same way, completely coincidentally. But you get out that life script and you go, oh, this must be what always happens. I have divorced parents, it happened to them, it's happened to me twice. This must be what always happens. Humans like to feel safe. They like to have a reason things happen so we can grasp it in our minds, because we're just really big stupid apes, let's be honest. We use these scripts as a way to externalize our problems and not put the blame on ourselves for things that are happening, instead of just accepting the fact that maybe it's just life or it's an us problem. From that point on, any other relationship that you go into, you will subconsciously be following this life script and act in a way which forces your partner to leave the relationship. Maybe you just stop trusting them because how could you trust someone you already know is going to leave? And then, miraculously, out of nowhere, they leave. But you get out your life script and go, I knew this is what always happens. This is what always happens. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Tony Robbins, not Harrison Ford. I don't know why Google thinks that. There are loads of mini life scripts that we all follow on a day-to-day basis, most commonly formed through unfortunate coincidences or predetermined events like from childhood, the people we grew up with or hang around now, people you spend a lot of time with that subconsciously affect how you act and view the world. And more commonly than not, these are quite destructive. Boys Don't Cry being a great example, and one I personally suffer with. I was told by my parents, and just as society as a whole, that part of being a man is that we just don't cry. I can only recall 2 times in the last 5 years that I've cried. That's accounting for both in public or with someone else and alone. And both of these times I look back on with extreme regret and disappointment in the way I've acted. Have there been more times that I probably should have cried? Absolutely, but I didn't. I stopped myself. Now, part of this is fantastic. Emotional abstinence is extremely useful when helping others or just appearing as someone that you can rely on, basically being a man, which is definitely where this comes from. However, it's definitely more destructive than it is helpful. It spiraled into complete emotional neglect and basically just glossing over any negative emotion I'd feel, putting it down to it is what it is and I'm a man so I'm just going to deal with it instead of trying to explore in private why I feel these emotions. Over the years, this has led to a lot of amnesia and just lack of understanding as to the way I act and the way I feel, and only recently have I really understood that this is a problem and have been taking acts to rewrite this script. But this takes time and it is extremely hard. But it is worth mentioning that these life scripts can be rewritten, and taking time to identify them is something I would recommend to everybody, despite age, despite gender, it doesn't matter. These affect everybody. But not all life scripts are bad. They do often play a huge role in being able to recall past important memories, as it's much easier for us to recall said memories when we're repeating the same actions. Fun fact, if you're in between the ages of 15 to 25, then statistically you're at the point in your life where you'll be making the most important memories, or the ones you'll remember the most of. This is shown in a graph called the lifespan retrieval curve, or the reminiscence bump. This graph is a consolidation of how many memories people recall from their age of encoding or when they were made, and it consists of 3 important parts. 1, childhood amnesia. This normally happens between ages around 0 to 8-ish. ish. 3, weird order, I know, but this is the period of recency where obviously we recall more memories that we've more recently made due to our short-term memory being a lot stronger than our long-term memory, or more prominence, not really stronger, I don't know how accurate that is. And finally, 2, the reminiscence bump, occurring from ages around 15 to 25-ish. There are many theories as to why this bump exists in the first place, but one of the more leading ones is that during this time period of 15 to 25, we undergo most of our firsts. Whether that be first job, first relationship, first heartbreak, first big loss, big birthdays like 18, 21, first time moving out, the list goes on. But since these are the first times that we go through these events, it's also simultaneously the first time we go through the emotions that come with these events, and these often shape us into the people we become, how we feel, and how we act later in life. These may happen later on in life, but since we've already gone through them a first time, we've already constructed life scripts to help us deal with them. The very existence of this theory, at least in my interpretation, majorly contradicts some huge plot points in the free will argument, because it seems like all of our decisions come from these pre-imposed scripts that we just follow out on a day-to-day basis. This is almost giving us the illusion that we make our own decisions, when in reality, anyone who could go through our mind and read all of these life scripts could tell us exactly how we're going to act or what we're going to do in any given situation before we do it. But in a sense, it's not controlled by some higher entity or some god, it's controlled by our own qualia. We all interpret and understand things slightly differently. Yes, there may be some life scripts involved in it, but I'm talking deeper. Some children are good at maths in school, and some children are better at English. Yes, there may be some life scripts that kind of tip the scales either way. For instance, if your parents say, oh, you know, some people aren't good at maths, you might just be better at English, then they might not try as hard at maths, then forcing it to play out like, oh, I'm not good at maths, when in reality, you could have been. But that's not always the case. There are some situations that it's just fact that some people are better at calculating numbers than they are writing massive paragraphs. Just facts. That isn't to do with any psychological encoding, that's just plain statistics. That's just how it works. It's a quirk of being human. There are some things that we excel at and some things that we don't. This ranges from everything from maths to understanding emotions to being a fast or slow learner. And these different quirks that we have will influence us to go down different paths in life. But just because you're bad at maths doesn't mean that necessarily you're not going to go into a mathematically dominated field. Maybe you enjoy maths even though you're not that good at it, and you go and be an accountant. That isn't because you're naturally good at something or something you've been told, it's something you do because you want to do it. So fundamentally, no, it doesn't disprove free will. What this does mean to me though, is that a huge part of our lives are programmable, and we are the programmers. Imagine you work for Google, but you aren't very good at coding. I don't know how you got the job, don't question it. You have this code that you need to change slightly, optimize it, make it more beneficial and more efficient, but you also have to move it from one programming language to another. If you've never coded before, I'm sorry, it basically just means you're rewriting everything from scratch almost. Not quite from scratch, but it's basically like translating something from English to French if you know both languages fluently, and changing it ever so slightly to make sure it makes sense in its new home language. Life scripts are a ball ache to change, and that's because they're so deeply rooted into our subconscious. But once you've identified them, you can start the slow and tedious process of changing it, not to hinder yourself, but to favour yourself. Let's take, for example, again, boys don't cry. Yes, it may be helpful in a lot of scenarios. I have definitely benefited from not crying in certain situations, but it would also be beneficial for me to cry on my own in the comfort of my room to get all that emotion out instead of letting it bubble up to boiling point. So we take boys don't cry and we turn it into boys don't cry most of the time, which is a great first step. You've identified the problem and you've rewrote the title of the new revised script, but obviously that doesn't mean the script is just going to write itself out. I've already said it, but I'll say it again, this takes time, man. I'm nowhere near finished with this personal example. In fact, it's been like 6 months since I first identified this problem and I still haven't cried, so that just stands testament. But I have come closer than I have ever felt in my life to be able to achieve this goal, so that must stand for itself. There are so many scripts or mini scripts that happen in our lives subconsciously all the time. So today's homework is to find one of the bad ones in your own life. You're only going to be able to do this if you're completely and brutally honest with yourself, because otherwise you're going to get nowhere and you're just going to become narcissistic about it. But if you do manage to find one, take it and change the title. That's the first step, and once you've done that, you'll be on the right course to be drastically improving your life in the coming years. And hey, maybe just out of coincidence, you'll unlock one of those key memories that you look back on so fondly when you're 50 years of age. 50? That's still quite young, but okay. Best of luck to you.